It's cringy to be a Star Wars fan these days. It's hard to be cool and like Star Wars because liking Star Wars is like liking McDonald's. So when I say I'm a Star Wars fan, people get associations. There's always been an approach to Star Wars fandom that has been unhealthy, and I think it has extended past its due in 2026. There is a growing population of lore watchers, cosplayers, Funko Pop enjoyers. And to be honest, my pretentious Brooklynite ass would like to be proud of liking Star Wars without having the association of those guys. Now, also the larger brands associations, given that Disney's mismanagement of the product has made the fandom worse and has made engaging in the IP worse. I think we need to stop allowing for the loudest of us Star Wars fans to be the ones who are boiling down these mythological narratives into canonical fact. I have no interest in maintaining canon. I want good stories. And if you don't want good stories, then what you want is to consume product. You want to consume Disney slop. And I don't want to consume Disney slop. I would like high quality narratives. I would like to engage in storytelling. Yeah, so I need to describe the term a database animal for a second because I think this term is an extremely cogent way of describing what's happening with Star Wars fandom and I think nerd culture in general. The term database animal comes from Hiroki Azuma's book Otaku Japan's Database Animals. Azuma essentially argues that postmodern consumers no longer engage with media primarily through narrative, ideology, meaning, or myth. Rather, they engage through databases, traits, fragments, lore, aesthetic packages, character archetypes, and disconnected signs and symbols. The modern fan no longer asks, what does this story mean? They ask, what information can I collect from this world? The consumer becomes a curator of fragments, not a believer in the story's narrative or an interpreter of what it might mean, or an artist that creates based on that work, simply a database animal. Nerd culture in general has a tendency to seek simulation, to live in the world they grew up in, or to disappear in the fantasy they've fallen in love with. In doing so, they often disengage with the narrative attached to that media product and choose to engage in the details of the media product itself. I think that this tendency is natural, but immature. I think there's a way to both love the IP that you've grown up with and also have a healthy attachment to the world around you rather than re-entering the Matrix. Database animals obsess over canon, continuity, timelines, lore accuracy, what's officially true, fixations on hyperspecifics, exact power scaling of characters, technology explanations, hidden details, obscure side characters. In Star Wars, there's this joke term called glupshido, and a glupshido is essentially this idea that there are named characters that are totally meaningless that exist in the background, but we know them, and when they show up in media products, we go, oh my god, glupshido's back. That type of glupshido recognition is very database animal. Database animals want to feel like they're inside of the fictional universe and prioritize immersion over meaning, preferring world building over narrative itself. Obviously, that includes identifying through the pursuit and acquisition of merchandise, collecting, cosplaying, brand aesthetics, fandom becoming your whole personality. This also includes obsessive archival behavior, including fan wikis, lore compilations, YouTube explainers, iceberg videos, databases, and Reddit threads. The database animal is never really satisfied because simulation never fully satisfies. This is because the consumer seeks to complete their identity through the consumption of the media. There is a constant maintenance of new canon, new games, new lore, new shows, new discourse, meaning that the more product that gets put out, the more arguing happens online, the more database management exists, and the more emotional attachment to the product, not because they like the stories, but because they like the data. Obviously, Azuma observed this especially in anime and otaku fandom. I believe that the Star Wars fandom now behaves almost identically. Here's my thesis. The desire for simulation through database animalism is an underdeveloped understanding of the psyche's desire to integrate the signs and signifiers of a cultural object cohesively into a sense of self. We seek to simulate the act of living within a fandom, fixating on the details obsessively rather than contextualize the narrative of the cultural product fully. This keeps you consuming and purchasing while also endlessly wanting more. People obsess about Star Wars because they want to feel that feeling they had when they were a kid. They want to feel fully immersed. This is why shows and books and video games will never fully satisfy the Star Wars database animal. There will always be mistakes that need to be corrected. There will always be vibes that don't get matched. Therefore, because there is no winning, you can produce slop that references canon and have it satisfy the deepest urge of the Star Wars database animal and allows them to give a good review of the movie because it included their favorite glup shitto. Fandoms mistake simulation for integration. Cosplaying as your favorite character is not integrating the character traits of that person into you. LARPing is not understanding what the setting actually implies. Cosplaying and LARPing in this world are fun. They're enjoyable. I too engage in a little bit of tabletop role-playing, as it were. I dabble. But I do think that this obsession over cosplay and LARPing and building your lightsaber creates obsession about hyper-specifics rather than cultivating, personality. I think this also leads to a lot of pain because you end up caring about what the IP owner does with the brand. In the case of Disney or Warner Brothers, in the case of Harry Potter, for example, you can remain basically eternally disappointed by the design by committee approach that these companies have to the creative properties you grew up with as a kid. In essence, what happens is that the mythic layer of the property gets flattened into database trivia. A lightsaber is not just a weapon, it signifies knightliness, spiritual discipline, inheritance, samurai cinema, religious ritual, masculinity. The fandom often collapses the symbolic meaning of these things into the diegetic function. How hot is a lightsaber really? Can Beskar really resist a lightsaber? What are the exact rules of how this lightsaber is made? Samuel L. Jackson wanted a purple lightsaber because it was cool.
Good guys are green and blue, bad guys are red. That's just the way it works.
No purple left?
You might get purple.
You want a purple lightsaber because Wikipedia told you that it was actually because they're kind of a dark Jedi and they're not fully on the light side. And you understand? I think that lore consumption becomes this self-perpetuating beast. Lore videos are not inherently bad. It's really what you do with the information. So what does one do with the excess knowledge they gain from 8-hour lore videos other than make more lore videos, right? Useless facts make you good at one thing, conveying them in 60-second chunks on YouTube for other people like you.
Here are 3 things people typically get wrong about Star Wars.
This also makes you an expert consumer at buying media products. If you have a wealth of information about glup shittos or how lightsabers work, when the corporation puts out something that is lore accurate, lore friendly, or friendly to the database animal, you are more likely to purchase it with your hard-earned cash. Companies want you to desire simulation and not go live your own Star Wars. They don't want you self-actualizing. They want you refreshing the page, spending hours on lore analysis videos, buying plushies and video games, and making sure you show up to their movie. Disney no longer produces narrative because narratives are messy. Storytelling is scary to the media corporation because storytelling changes people's minds. Simulation and database analysis do not change people's minds. It changes minds about what you might think about the yellow lightsaber, but it does not change people's minds about the way they see the world. I think this is why a lot of super nerds in the Star Wars world hate The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi debacle is fans that are fixated on simulation and database reacting to an attempt at telling those fans they need to go and make their own stories. I do not think that Rian Johnson handled that well. I think it was a rather mean-spirited way of doing so, and I don't necessarily like that movie. But I do think that fundamentally you're dealing with two different approaches to Star Wars with The Last Jedi. There are the database animals that don't like that you discarded canon in the way that you did and honor the story in the way that they feel like it should. It doesn't feel like Star Wars to them. Rian Johnson says, fuck you, go make a life that is worth living. And I think people really don't like that. It's also why I think database animals don't like Andor. Andor prioritizes narrative and emotion over simulation, and it has no interest in making you feel the way that Star Wars made you feel as a kid. And it's better for it. It's a narrative that makes you feel things and change your mind about the world. And the database animal has no interest in these things. So I'd like to propose that instead of becoming an expert on Star Wars, become an anthropologist on what Star Wars might mean, the signs and signifiers that it employs, the historical context that it exists in. George Lucas did not become a Star Wars fan. What if instead you took those useless facts and did something with them? That's what George Lucas did. He took his experience and created something new with it. There is a rich tradition behind Star Wars. There are other science fiction and fantasy worlds that inspired Star Wars. Read the books of Isaac Asimov. Read Dune. Go watch some old space serials and see what you're missing. George Lucas was entranced by car culture and World War II dogfighting. Learn about those things. The approach that database animals actually need is anthropological integration. You're not actually missing what it feels like to live in Star Wars. You're forgetting what it was like to approach life with a childlike wonder. Make your life feel like Star Wars, not through cosplay or LARPing, but actually integrating and making yourself a more interesting person. In the spirit of making yourself a more interesting person, here is a list of cool shit you could be doing instead of purchasing merchandise. If you liked the used future aesthetic of Star Wars, rusty spaceships, ramshackle living quarters, you would love doomsday prepping, rat rod modification. If you like piloting and racing, you could get a flight simulator and learn to dogfight. You could get into FPV drone racing. Look how cool it looks to put that headset and fly a drone around abandoned buildings. You like droids? Get into robotics. Download an offline LLM and program it to talk to you like C-3PO would. You like sword combat? Get into medieval sword fighting. Go find your local HEMA organization. Do you like the concepts of the Force? Go look into Taoism or Zen Buddhism or Western occultism. Do you enjoy the gross little guys, the glupshitos? Get into sculpture or art or puppetry. Learn about Jim Henson. Just go read a whole book about Jim Henson. You will love Jim Henson. I promise you, if you like glupshitos, you will love Jim Henson. If you like the feeling of adventure, go on your own fucking adventures. Go do urban exploration, find an abandoned building. Go live a dangerous life. Fight the power, dream, rebel. You don't need to dress like a Star Wars character. You can just dress inspired by these things and learn about interesting designers. You might really like Rick Owens. You should look into Yoshi Yamamoto. Buy some acronyms. Some Issey Miyake. Go find the things that inspire this world and integrate those things, right? You don't need to go to con. Make your own Star Wars. And then once you learn about all of those things, apply them to the other things that you learned about. So apply what you learned from Zen Buddhism to your medieval sword fighting classes. Drive your rat rod to an abandoned building and race drones around it. Kill fascist dictators. Forgive your father for his wrongs. Commit yourself to a cause greater than yourself. Fandom is cheap. It's surface level interfacing with content. It is the consuming of slop. The goal is not to simulate living inside fiction. The goal is to integrate the symbolic impulses that fiction awakens in you into your real life. If you do want to invest in 8-hour lore videos or cosplay or buy Funko Pops, don't let me yuck your yum. There's just some of us out there that find the consumption of brand fugly and garish.
Can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?
I don't want to to live in Star Wars because Star Wars is our life. We already live within Star Wars. There are fascist forces beyond our control that use technology and magic and religion against us. I don't need Darth Vader to really exist to see that there are obvious parallels in our life. Integration is the goal. Star Wars was created as a myth for a world that no longer has religion. And to be quite honest with you, I think that engaging with myth through the lens of the database animal is missing the point. The database animal has no interest in why Odysseus went on his journey, just what his boat was made out of. I hope you like this video. I have the tendency of a database animal, so this is in part a intervention for myself. Why shouldn't I integrate these things in a way that makes me feel proud of loving the product that I grew up with? It's hard to find that love when the fandom seems to only be fixated on details. The one exception to this is the bread circus. I love the bread circus. I think that their hyperfixation on details enables proper integration of the narrative. I think that they found a way through. I recommend watching the Bread Circus. There's also a couple YouTubers that I will put down that I think are actually thinking about Star Wars in an integrative way rather than a database animalistic way. And I recommend watching those creators below because I feel like they have been really enjoyable to me. Anyway, thanks. Like and subscribe. Do all the things. I will see you all very soon.